Great. All right, welcome everybody. We're going to kick off another session of Trench Talk on Tuesdays. An extremely powerful panel that we have today. We've got Nirupa from the Brigade Group and our Brigade REAP team to moderate this session. And I'm going to turn it over to her right away to let her introduce all the panelists today and take it away. All yours, Nirupa.
Thank you, Gautam. I'm really excited to be part of this, or rather moderating this panel today. As I was just telling the ladies on the panel that it's usually me on the other side of the panel, and usually you're the only woman. So it's always nice to see the numbers being completely reversed. You know, the reason we're having this talk, and the reason I think it's important, is because we are seeing a very important and societal shift in the way globally and in India, in the kind of equal representation a lot of women are getting in pretty much all walks of life, right? Whether it's the armed forces, whether it's sports, business, you know, there's always positive news about women making waves in whichever sphere it is. And these gender topics are generally always a point of hot discussion. But, you know, contrary to the kind of shift that we are seeing, at least in the past, or as per what historical data has shown us, and according to Forbes and say PitchBook, there are stats that say that, you know, women-led ventures account for only 5% of the total investment of the total $150 billion that is invested annually. And this is despite the fact that there are a lot of statistics to show that women-led ventures generally, you know, are a lot more profitable as per another BCG survey. And of course, women-led ventures tend to have better cultural ethos, as documented by multiple reports. I was actually reading some data from the Female Founders Fund, and it had some really interesting statistics, which I thought I'd share with all the viewers today. Basically, just in 2021, apparently there were 39 unicorns that were women-led companies, and about 51, almost 52 billion, $51.7 billion was raised just by female founders. There were 3,342 startups that were female founded that were actually funded just in the year 2021. And of course, there were about 5 companies, including Bumble and Vimeo, that went public. And again, these were all women-led companies. The last stat I'll throw at you is that almost it takes about 6.7 years for female-founded companies to exit, to make an exit in their company, compared to, which is actually 13% ahead and faster than the average for all startups in general. And I think, you know, closer to home, it was actually surprising to see that I think on the DPIIT website, we actually saw that more than a third, almost 40% of the startups in India are actually have at least one female co-founder, which is actually a lot better than the global average. And of course, we recently witnessed Nykaa's fabulous IPO, which was extremely well received and of course made headlines, you know, across the globe. And I'm sure there's room for a lot more Nykaas to show up, and a lot more women billionaires to be raised and broadcasted. But in that light, I think I want to introduce the panel. We have a group of stellar ladies, and I'll just take a minute to introduce each one of them. First, of course, we have Ankita Vashishta. Ankita is the founding partner at Strong Her Capital, a fund dedicated towards women-led companies, but more importantly, women-focused and women-enabling ventures. Prior to this, Ankita founded the Sarada Fund, which was Asia's first of its kind fund, again focused on ventures promoted by women entrepreneurs. Ankita is super passionate about women entrepreneurship and innovation. She's on a mission to get more women into venture capital, entrepreneurship, and leadership positions. So welcome, Ankita. Good to have you here. Next, we have Stuti Vijaya Raghavan. Stuti is the founder of Urban Venture Labs, a platform to accelerate technology for climate smart and inclusive cities. Prior to this, Stuti had been a consultant at McKinsey, both in the US and in India, and headed strategy at Lodha Group and founded 2 entrepreneurial ventures. Stuti is very active in the social impact space and hopes the best brains and commitment will focus on the world's most pressing problems. Yeah, and I'll stop there. I won't get into all our degrees, but and of course, there's next we have, so welcome Stuti, and next we have Pankuri. Pankuri is the founder and CEO of Pankuri, a social community platform where women can network, learn, and shop online through live streaming, chat, and micro courses. It's backed by marquee investors, and Pankuri's mission is to enable millions of Indian women to be active participants in beauty and lifestyle conversations online instead of being passive consumers. Thanks for that, Pankuri. And Pankuri is actually also the co-founder of Grab House, India's first peer-to-peer home renting platform, and sold it to Quikr in 2016. Last but not least, we have Priti Pandey, the founder and CEO of Structure Eco. She's a Forbes 30 under 30 entrepreneur in Asia. And instead of being one of the whiners about the husk burning that plagues northern India in the winter and leads to so much of pollution, Sthiti decided to harness this waste and create biocomposite panels. Her company Structure is India's first company to use these biocomposite panels for construction. Hailing from Gorakhpur, she holds a master's degree in construction management. And I'm really happy and proud to say that Sthiti was part of cohort 9 in Brigade REAP. So welcome to all of you. I saw we lost Stuti. Is she still there?
No, she's there.
No, she's here.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe your video went off because I couldn't see. Okay, great. Okay, so let's begin. The first question will start with Ankita. So Ankita, you started Saha Fund when you were not even 30, right? So what was the impetus for starting this fund focused on women startups? And what were some of the specific problems you wanted to address, especially with the gender-focused strategy that you had at Saha Fund?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. And it's amazing being part of this stellar panel of women. You mentioned a lot of stats in the beginning of this kind of talk, and that's exactly what I wanted to address. So when I launched Saha Fund in 2015, it was the first global gender lens focused fund to invest in women in tech, because I'm someone who's been in private equity, venture capital, and tech ventures for the past 14 years. Been very lucky to have amazing opportunities and mentors, but as I kind of was more involved in the whole venture capital ecosystem, and when I set up my first accelerator, I realized that why weren't more women entrepreneurs coming into these programs. Now of course there's so many angel networks, but years ago when I joined a few of them, we used to have these monthly meetings, and 5 entrepreneurs would come and pitch. And I would realize that so many times the woman entrepreneur wouldn't present, even though she's present there. And of course, when you are coming and presenting as a woman entrepreneur and say talking about, PCOS or very woman focused service or product, or, women's clothing, you're pitching to 15 men who are not the end user or consumer. So I saw so many deals being left out and not funded. And I said, I really want to address and change this. And, one of my best kind of investments in the early days is a company called Luxola, which became Asia's biggest online cosmetic store. And we sold it to Sephora. And, that was run by Alexis, a second-time woman entrepreneur. And, that's when it just hit me. And I said, I want to change this, right? We need more Alexises. We need more opportunities for women to come and present. So that's when I launched Saha Fund. And I said, I want to be a platform where we want to create opportunities for women entrepreneurs to come and present, have access to capital. And we wanted to basically, through capital, really impact and empower women entrepreneurs, women employees, and really impact women consumers. As you rightly said, for us to really have access to inclusive products and services, they need to be built by inclusive leadership, right? So we need women at leadership positions, creating businesses, women investors investing in these businesses, and of course, female founders, kind of really building out this ecosystem. And now, of course, we have been able to, in the past 2 years, actually connect much more efficiently online with anyone. But when we would attend those conferences in earlier days, and, it's pretty much only men, right? So women have always lacked communities and networks. And that was the idea that, we wanted to create a platform where women can say, hey, this is Saha Fund, or this is Stronger Now that I've built. You can get access to capital. You can get to women leadership networks. You can get support from peers, founders in the ecosystem to really build my product out, right? I think that was the kind of inspiration because, as you rightly said today, I think 8 to 10% of kind of fund, the entrepreneurs are female founders only. And to be honest, only I think 2% of venture capital dollars goes to these startups, right? So, I mean, we very proudly wanted to say that if you are a woman-led founder, we want to fund you. And that was what we wanted to kind of build out at Stronger and Saha Fund.
Amazing. So just a couple of follow-up questions, are you seeing any difference in trends between like globally versus India, or is India kind of following the same global trends, at least in terms of the percentages of, women getting funded, the number of startups led by women? That's the first question. And then could you also walk us through the evolution of Stronger Capital, from Saha Fund?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, I'll be very honest, when I launched, in 2015, it was the first fund, right? And it was a huge education process, both on the investor side and on the founder side. Since then, things have changed a lot, right? In terms of more angels, more kind of seed funding available. But I do have to say, because we're comparing global versus India, there's still not enough institutional capital for diversity, right? Like today, when so for example, when I launched Saha Fund, it was an India-US fund, but it was an India entity, and I raised it out of India from family offices and individuals. But today for Stronger, it's a US fund. There are PayPal, Visa, Salesforce, Best Buy, like all the big top corporations in the US now are funding fund managers and venture capital dollars, right? Initially, they only wanted to invest in rural or healthcare or something to do with, that, but now they want to invest in women in business, and they want to invest in people who are also investing in businesses. So I think that is what I see very lacking, unfortunately, in India, is that there isn't much corporate or institutional capital available for women, right? So what happens is then in turn, there is less capital on the whole for diversity, right? And then of course, in the US, in certain states and a lot of corporates, it's mandated to have women on boards, women in leadership positions, which yes, we can see that happening slowly in India. But again, there needs to be more stuff being more mandated. I know in Europe, you are, and in certain states also in the US, you are made to report your diversity data, right? And there's a lot of case studies out there. The minute countries and companies are made to report their data, they're answerable, and therefore they make those changes, right? So I would love to see that happening in India as well, where we are made to report, how many women have you promoted? How many women do you hire in the first place, right? And what have you done within your organizations to continue orientation and upskilling of women to kind of reach those, leadership positions? So that's all those things is what we're working on at with Stronger. I do have to say that now at least, it's so amazing that we have so many more panels and people talking about this. I think it was so nascent before, but now at least there are a lot of groups, accelerators, funds coming out for women. But yes, a huge way to still go to kind of meet what's happening in US and the kind of dollars that are being allocated to diversity in women. And so that's something that I would love to change. And just in terms of, you said Saha Fund to Stronger. So Saha Fund was obviously built out as an India-US fund, and investing in majority Indian companies. But I think through the journey of what I did at Saha Fund and now at Stronger, we're still investing in women-led and women-focused companies. We're of course now a bigger fund. We're raising around $75 to $100 million, but it's a global fund, US, UK, India. And I've also narrowed down the focus areas where I'm investing in femtech, fintech, future of work, and consumer tech, because we really believe that these sectors engage women and empower women to be economic contributors and be successful. I mean, I think it's so powerful if women can take care of their health, have access to finance, create wealth for themselves, access to finance for their businesses, upskill themselves, pursue careers, have access to childcare. and of course, work from anywhere, right? I think that's the kind of thesis for Stronger. And along with the fact that, of course, I've been very passionate about funding female founders with Stronger, we're also building a very strong community of women investors and investors investing in women, along with certain initiatives and communities around, women on boards, women in leadership positions, and creating a very women inclusive culture at the workplace.
Great. Thank you so much, Ankita. And yeah, I don't know what the hesitancy in investing with female founders is, because when you look at microfinancing, they all prefer giving their loans to women-led to rather the women of the household, because they know that their payback period, that their payback is more assured in that case.
Yes, very less results.
Absolutely. So moving on to Stuti, you've worn so many hats in your very illustrious career. And now, of course, you're doing management consulting, you've done multiple startups, and now you're setting up this accelerator with Social Alpha. Did you encounter any ceilings along the way that you'd want to highlight, or any stories or anecdotes that you'd want to share? And, how did you navigate through those?
Sure. I always thought I had it easy. I went to engineering school, but we were like 30 out of 2,000, I think, women. Business school at that time was 20 out of 200, so the ratios were bad, but nothing felt like the cards were stacked against women. And I always used to make a big deal about how, it's meritocracy, let's not put a gender lens on everything. And I was all about that, through my career. And, New York consulting for McKinsey is, again, diversity is an actual topic, and they're really making an effort, and you have so many programs. And when I moved back to India in 2007, I joined real estate in Bombay as the head of strategy and financing, right? So this was kind of the, Nirupa, you've seen this, I'm sure, with a huge lens, as has Pankuri, as a lot of, I think almost everyone on this panel has seen something in the sector. And as the only person in the VP layer who was a woman, almost, anything that I would go to would have no women in it. I would go in to meet government officials who would assume I'm part of the family, because otherwise, why is a woman sitting, talking to us about this, right? So it was, I think that's when it really struck me that in our hallowed offices of consulting and finance and, sitting in New York and in Bombay, the reality of being a woman on the ground, in a lot of these core sectors in frontline positions is just a completely different ballgame, right? And I think I became much kinder as a result of this, versus being like, you know what, if you've got the brains and the commitment, you can make it wherever you are. And you really realized, I remember being part of the sexual harassment committee, and we would see the issues that would come up is, this is the first generation of Indian women who are coming in as equals, working with Indian men on like so many different roles. And some of them were laughable, right? Almost for some of us who come in from very different backgrounds, somebody will be saying, this guy came and offered me a chocolate on site. Why does he have to harass me like this? And you just realize the equation is so vastly different for the broader set of Indian women. And I think, it's so fantastic when, I now sit, I really buy into what, you were saying, Ankita, about inclusion goals as a fund. I sit on the investment committee of a Series B ESG fund with all, funders from Europe. And we are reporting on every single company on what the gender diversity and inclusion goals in senior management, in the workforce, in, are. So I think it's really important that many of us are in, roles where we step out a little bit about our comfort zone, in which could be traditionally have been good with Indian women, but really move into things and kind of get the perspective from the ground, which, I think is still a very different ballgame, rapidly changing. I would have so many women on my team who would say, we have to wake up at 4 a.m., cook for the family, then take the train for 1.5 hours to get to work. And you don't even realize that reality, right? So I think it's really important whether, we are funders, whether we are, employing them, whether they're colleagues, to have, that reality of what their lives actually are.
Yeah, very true. I mean, even I always thought I had it easy, where it's just my sister and me. And, my parents raised us to always, work and be financially independent. And they would always say, do whatever you want, but just be financially independent, because that's, it's a big determinant in how you live your life. And I never found any major issues or some, gender specific issues. But it all comes, kind of crashing down once you have a child also.
Yeah.
I'm the mother of 2 young kids, and then you realize, hey, in the end, you have to look after the household, you have to look after your work, you have to look after your kids. And in the end, it all boils down to you, and that juggling that happens is very apparent only post that. But going back to another one of your ventures, the Urban Venture Labs, it has a very noble charter story.
Yeah.
And harnessing technology for, inclusive cities that are smart and sustainable. And I'm glad we are in discussion at Brigade REAP with you as well. And I think that collaboration will be very exciting. What are some of the diversity specific initiatives that you are working on?
Sure. So, there's quite a lot of climate data that tells us how disproportionately climate change is affecting the poor, is affecting women, just their role in everything from water to dealing with, flooding. Just the impact on them is huge. But beyond this, we kind of wanted to develop a framework specific to inclusion in cities, right? A lot of the smart city agenda tends to become IoT, blockchain, all this, but what is the problem you're solving for gets lost in the picture, right? So if you look at our inclusion agenda in specific, and we're talking to your team as we talk about this, is we're really saying, let's look at, gender inclusive cities. A lot of urban planners and architects planning our cities are men, right? Yeah. And there is a difference in safety and accessibility, just the way the city is laid out, everything that affects not just women, but affects seniors, affects differently abled. And as long as you don't have their participation in the planning process, you're going to create these townships and these roads and, public amenities that make sense for, a smaller group. So in our inclusion agenda, we are planning actual incubator themes based on specific inclusive. I think the first one will actually be migrant workers, right? Because COVID just hit us so hard on, what is happening with, what are the products and services that are actually developed and designed for migrant workers who are living in another state, who still can't access even rations, right? In spite of our one ration card policy. But we do have, the gender lens coming up at some point. Like I said, the differently able lens is again something we don't really think of as a problem. And you see, especially if you've lived overseas, you see how everything from access to buses has to be different for the old and for the differently abled, etc. Right? So we're hoping to address it, with specific incubators, while even where in the rubric of investments and incubation, we do have the more generic diversity indices, but hopefully more specific programs as well.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad to hear that you're working on things like safety, especially in smart cities, because I always say, you can deal with the power cuts, you can deal with the bad roads, you can deal with the potholes, you can deal with whatever it is. But the one thing that really scares me is safety, safety of your kids, safety of your girls, safety of your little boys. And that's, I think, from a woman's perspective, I think safety is just such a big issue, like at the workplace, coming to work, going to work, so many different aspects of it. So I'm really glad to see that, you have a focus on that aspect as well. I think moving on to Pankuri, always delighted to talk to a PropTech founder. And, just curious to know about your whole genesis of GrabHouse, its journey, the exit that you managed with Quicker, and just that whole story.
Sure. So when I was listening to all of you, I was just sort of replaying in my mind events and incidents when we faced certain issues, we faced all of these differences and gaps. And I just believe that I keep speaking to a lot of women who are doing really well. And one thing is common, they all come from very supportive parents. And at some point, because we feel that we are a little privileged, and that is the reason we are able to, I feel that we are able to conveniently ignore the grassroots issues and then sort of move forward. But I come from a very small town, Jhansi, and I've sort of seen the two worlds. You're the corporate world, the startup, the glamorous world of startup, and also the three city life and aspirations and how people live. In fact, a lot of my school friends got married in Jhansi, right? So while they are well to do, but then still the way they live their lives and their concerns, thoughts, opinions are completely different than mine. But we're all sort of, thinking about the same thing: safety, inclusion, not being looked from at a different lens, and getting an opportunity to move forward. Like, some of us want to build companies, some of them want to be safe, keep their families safe, keep the families happy, but it's sort of the same thing. So I started Grabhouse when I was 23 years old, and this was 2013, 14. So I was very young, of course, and that was also the time when I would go to conferences or go to pitch to raise money. I would usually be the only girl in the whole room. And I think the biggest challenge at that time was to all the networking events were basically to come together and start conversations with people whom you don't know otherwise. So I think the biggest challenge was to walk up to someone and introduce yourself and then start a conversation, which obviously, I mean, sometimes I could do, but a lot of times I would be the only one standing in the corner, or probably mingling with the people whom I already know. So networking was never helpful for me. I don't think networking ever did anything for me. But the good thing was that I was able to find people who became partners, stakeholders, employees, and supporters to make Grabhouse what it became. The one thing which really helped was that I never really considered myself as an outsider or as someone who is in minority. So I think that with that confidence, I was able to make people comfortable. It's not just that we are not comfortable talking to men. A lot of times they're also figuring out how to start a conversation. So I think that really helped. And the whole point of Grabhouse was to help people like me find homes without real estate agents, save money. The real estate agents were obviously very expensive for youngsters who are first job or maybe studying to afford these kind of homes in Bombay, Bangalore, etc. So because it came from a very personal experience, I was in Mumbai. My first job was in Mumbai. So 2 years, I had to really change 5 houses and go through that whole process every time. And it would always confuse me. So that personal experience made me really empathize with the customers that we were building for. And we could hence quickly do very high product-led growth, which was what Grabhouse was known for, that it was a very tech-first company, really one of the first companies which were building tech around real estate. And then we sold it to Quicker in 2016, which again was a great opportunity for me to work in a large organization. I never really worked. My first job was Teach for India, where I was responsible for a classroom. And then I started Grabhouse. So in Quicker, I sort of got a chance to work with the communications team, different verticals, product teams, marketing teams. And the more, we worked on enhancing user experience, I sort of started thinking that none of us are creating the user journey, keeping the specific needs and preferences of women in mind. It's a very generic product journey, that where do we need to capture the mobile number? Where do we need emails? And with the diversity, Quicker in that time was going deeper into all the verticals. So the more we thought about which categories are left to be sort of disrupted by technology, it didn't look like that there are enough. But then still, this whole thing to build for women was untouched. So with that thought, I left quicker, just that I want to build something for women because it's a massive opportunity. I truly believe that they are the decision makers in household, in any sorts of household. What
Yeah.
products to buy, what cooking oil to buy, what electrical appliances to buy. These are all decisions taken by women, and yet consumer tech companies are not really building for women.
So
Uh,
quickly, just before we get into, your latest venture, Pankuri, just wanted to go back to that bit about your exit to Quicker. Were there any pressures that you went through? What was the decision-making thought process? Because, a lot of that is a question on a lot of founders' mind as well.
No, I think that the one ethos is that customers are bigger than the team. The team is a little bigger than the company, and the company is bigger than the self. So when we were looking at sort of building where will this go next, and we were on a massive growth path. We'd raised money from Sequoia Capital, Kalari Capital, and India Quotient, and we sort of were responsible for a lot of employees, right? We had 300 employees at that point of time. We anticipated a dip in real estate market. Delhi NCR, there were some 5 lakh properties unsold. Plus, the investments in real estate startups had sort of slowed down because of recession as well. So at that time, I think that we had to take that decision of moving forward and partnering with someone who can fuel this growth that we are already working on. And it really, we spoke to actually a lot of people at that time, but we really had a checklist of things that we want in the partner. Would they sort of really want to build this business, or they would just want to acquire to kill a competitor? I think that was the biggest decision that we had to take. So the more we spoke with Quicker team, we realized that, okay, this is the place where we should sort of give the company that we've built, because it'll be scaled and not killed. So I think that was a very unanimous decision. I had a lot of support from the board as well. I would give credit to Vani also from Kalari Capital, because then that was a different dynamics when in boardrooms you have a founder and a senior investor. So it was actually, that's why I say that I feel I'm very privileged to have all of this.
Sure, absolutely. And your latest and Pankuri, your I guess your current venture, it's got inclusivity at its core. It's a platform that that it's not, and it's not just looking at things from a gender perspective, but it's also from a geographic point of view as well. So since women are your primary target audience on this platform, what are some of your learnings or observations? Like, is it easier or tougher to sell to women? Like, what are some of the nuances, that you need to internalize or keep in mind? And maybe like, what are something surprising that you noticed in your journey on this venture?
Yeah, so I had a lot of intuition around building this. And in the last 1 year that we've been actually working on the product and getting customer insights on that, we've seen that a lot of our intuition has sort of played out. The reason I wanted to start something like this was that I felt that women are largely underserved online. All the customer journeys are either created keeping a very generic user base in mind, or women who could actually go around internet and find what they are looking for. So even any e-commerce listings platform, right? You search any keyword on skincare or anything beauty, and you would get like thousands of products. So that is fine, I think, for us, because we can do our product research and we can get that feedback from our friends, that which product is working for you and which brands do you recommend. But that is not a luxury for a large percentage of women in the country, and especially in tier 2 and 3 cities, because they might not have that access and that exposure to brands, and why a new brand, what are these new D2C brands coming up, and what are they saying that there is science behind the cosmetics that you are using. These are things that sort of look very intimidating to them, and they are the next set of internet users, right? That I think we've reached a saturation level, that we are a very need based. If we need something, then we'll go online and we'll quickly figure it out and we're done with that. But for them, I think whatever we are seeing on the short video apps after TikTok ban, the way some of these short video apps have sort of scaled up, and that those are purely for entertainment and discovery, right? But in that, who are the people who are actually bringing in so much of user engagement and interaction? It's mostly people from non-metro cities, I would say. So when they are the new set of internet users, internet needs to be redesigned for them to be able to discover what can it do for them. And that is what the platform does. It is sort of a virtual assistant for women. They can come and find the communities in which they feel comfortable around their interests. And it could be anything like baking, cooking, beauty, skincare, even occasion based. Like Diwali was a massive festival for us. So learning from each other and sharing. And what we realized was that a lot of women are sharing their photos and videos and literally asking for feedback, that what do you think about this look that I've done? And if you go back to their Facebook or Instagram profile or even their WhatsApp status, they would not be posting it so actively. And the reason for this is that they don't feel that it is safe to sort of post your pictures, etc., online, your personal information online. And there is so much of trolling and bullying and making people embarrassed about the way they are presenting themselves, which has just taken new heights these days, that only people who can create very aesthetically short videos are now, creating content.
Right.
Therefore, that leaves like a huge percentage of women who know things, but they don't have the confidence to come in front of the camera. The second biggest insight is that every woman, whether she wants to get into a formal career or not, she wants to find some way of earning income or social status, one of these things. So not all women are. So when we say that there is less participation of women in workforce, that is not just because there are not enough opportunities, but a lot of women are not looking to get employed also for various reasons. But that doesn't mean that they don't want to do something at home and make some money or build their social status. So these are the two very interesting things that we've discovered.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Shruti, now going to you, you started Structure, single founder. In REAP, we generally try to stay clear of single founders because it adds a level of riskiness when we are mentoring a startup. But your conviction, your vision was so strong that, you kind of broke down all the doors with both the juries. Did you ever sort of feel handicapped being a single founder and, doing what you do? I think what you do is very grassroots level. It's not easy to do what you do. So were there any difficulties, not just being a woman, but also as a single founder?
Yeah, I think it's, sorry, my throat is slightly bad.
That's all right.
Yeah, I think these two have been a constant question for me for the last 3.5 years. Like with the woman aspect, it's usually a lot of surprise, usually good, often not that good. Like last 4 days, we were doing an exhibition and I must have met 1,000 people. And if someone met another person in my team and they would ask, okay, who's the founder? And they would point to me, they would just stop and come back just to meet me for a minute and be sure that like they were right about that information. Because we're in construction, building materials, real estate. And so that was always there. And of course, I still have to tell people my dad has nothing to do with my business, because people just assume by default that, okay, I'm just writing founder, but they're sure that my father, is either already into construction or is the one supporting me. And I have to tell them he has like no one's a civil engineer or construction background. But it's like you have to keep reiterating that. And it does sort of sometimes sort of make you feel, like you not belong to the room. And I think that is something I think a lot of all of you said before me. So you do enter rooms like that. I remember my first government meeting was when we were selected as one of the 10 technologies by the government, which was Center Ministry of Housing, 2 years back before COVID hit. I entered the room. I thought I was in the wrong room. Everyone thought I was in the wrong room too, because it was just a bunch of men in their 50s, these builders, contractors. And I entered and I was 28 at that point of time. I was running late for the meeting. And I actually thought maybe I'm in the wrong room because everyone just was like staring at me at the door. And then I asked, is this the room for the meeting? And they said yes. And then I entered. So it's always been interest. Like you have to take it a bit of with humor. So now I don't sort of like sit with it too much. I'm just like, okay, it's usually just a funny conversation with friends later. But it does build you up. I think when you keep answering, as you asked, when even I was giving the Brigade interview, or even with my rounds of funding, you do have to answer that question. But I think what answers it best is, your own data and what you've built. And I think that gives you more confidence than anything else. So it's just been interesting, though and because I've only been like mostly just around men, I think also the support has been from men too. And I think you started this, discussion by putting it, in a positive perspective. And I couldn't agree more that if there are a lot of men who are surprised, they've only been men too, who've really come forward and supported me, whether at mentors, investors, people who are working with me right now, experts. So it's like a mixed bag, I have to be around them. And I usually hope most days, they're on the side where they support that what we do. So
Yeah, I agree. And you recently raised some funds. What was that experience like?
Oh, it was a learning experience for me because I have no background in like finance and accounting. I did construction management, but it was very much, I mostly took subjects around construction than management because I had more interest in that. I should have known better than what I would do in my life. But it's been a learning, it's been a learning curve. And as you rightly again asked, it was again, again feeling the pulse that maybe again people are slightly more nervous about the fact that I'm a solo founder. I had a very good experience raising my round versus last year when I actually tried to raise last year and I decided not to after a month. And it was because I reached out to a couple of people and my experience was so like, they were like, oh, you're a woman. We do not invest, real estate just makes no sense for us. How would a builder, even see you as a vendor, basically, for that matter, leave alone convincing them for the product. They won't accept you. The product comes later, sort of a thing. So I almost sort of like let go. I was like, okay, we have enough funds. We were doing decently well. I decided not to raise. It was only when I came into Brigade and I was in part of the accelerator program, and I felt, okay, maybe I can again try and raise funds. And then it was very supportive, the funders that I have right now. But I do once in a while think about it that I hope in my later rounds, it's not a problem that I'm a solo founder.
Yeah.
But let's see, we'll get to that.
I'm sure by then your product will speak for itself.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think we've come down to the last leg. I want to open it up for questions, to the audience. But while we're waiting for the audience questions, maybe I'll do 2 rapid fire questions with the ladies here. So I guess, 2 questions that we're always asked, and I'm sorry, it's very cliched, but I'm always asked it. So this time I'll do the honors of asking you the same questions, but I'll flip it, right? I honestly think it's a great time to be a woman right now. And I think there's a lot of advantage to being a woman. So let me not ask the second question is more cliched. So I'll start with the first one. So the first one, what are the advantages you see being a woman in the business that you do or in the startup that you do? And I'm sure there are many of them. So, well, let's start with Ankita, since she's been quiet for a while.
Yeah. No, I think one of the advantages that we have is the fact that I think women play so many roles in their life, right? Being a mother, being, a daughter, being at the workplace, etc. Right? We can do so many tasks at once. I think we're amazing at kind of leading teams. We're, amazing at really bringing on, people together. and really taking on the kind of mantle of taking the mission forward, right? And as you rightly said, I think it's a great time to being a woman because there are so many opportunities and platforms today to take that. And I think every woman should leverage that, right? It's definitely a great place to be right now as a woman.
Yeah, I think people do sit up and take notice. Like Shruti, whatever said and done, people at least took notice because you're a woman. So sometimes we definitely can use it to advantage. Pankuri?
I think that there is just so much of awareness now, and now we know that women are leading at so many fronts. We have successful leaders across all the domains. That sort of makes this a focus, a spotlight thing, I would say, not an issue. Which means that there is so much opportunity to scale this up, and the good thing again is that we're sort of in the front of that, and using our learnings, we should be able to make this change really quickly, like how mobile internet has changed things. In the same way, it doesn't need to take a decade. Things will change really quickly in the next 2-3 years. So that's great.
Stuti?
I think it's a fantastic time to be a woman. I think there was a meme a couple of years ago, and 1 century ago, you'd be burnt at the stake, or you would be having 11 kids, or, all of that stuff, right? So I think we almost forget the progress we've made, right? So it's absolutely fantastic. I think, it would be great, regardless of gender, if we hold ourselves to the standard of saying, let's work on important and pressing problems for the planet and for us and for inclusion. I think that is, really not, let's use our extra empathy, our listening skills, our ability to, really manage stakeholders. If you're from the Indian joint family, you probably know how to manage generations of stakeholders inbuilt. But let's use that to solve for important things, right? That would be my big thing. And let's not get into the Saas Bahu mentality, right? Like, this was done to me 20 years ago, so let me do this to the next generation. Let's really be there to support each other, get the support of the amazing men in our lives, and really make this happen.
Absolutely. Amen to all the supportive men in our lives. Shruti, do you want to take that?
Sure. I think one thing that Stuti said that I also wanted to just reiterate, that I think I've mostly seen a lot of women, starting companies that have a lot of purpose behind it. There's a lot of thought, so it's like there's such good causes. So I think that just makes it more interesting and inspiring, the time that we are in right now. And secondly, I think because women have great listening skill, at least I've seen this with the building sector, that even men are, even they want to be treated nicely. Like, I'm not saying it very lightly, but I've seen this with blue collar workers. I've seen this with, small scale hardware vendors and builders, that, if there's someone on the other side of the phone who's just talking nicely to them with a lot of respect, you get more credit. I'm not joking. I've always gotten probably the most credit from a lot of my vendors for work than a lot of other people in the same space. So I think you just, and that's why, it's better to be who you are, So I've tried maximum most times to not be a man in the room, but just be a woman. And I think that works. It actually gets men also to feel good about themselves. There's so much, toxicity. There's so much, the way
There's
people
no power
talk.
play.
There's so much power play. There's so much, the way people talk to each other in our industry could be so harsh at times, just treating each other. And if there's just more soft energy in there to lead people, everyone, I think, would benefit out of it in general.
Lovely. Well said. Well said. So we have a couple of questions from the audience. So let me just take the first one, and anybody can jump in and take the question. It says, thank you for the very interesting insights. Ladies, how have you handled the trust issues on negotiation tables dominated by men? Anybody can jump in. And this is by Anuradha. Anyone want to take that?
Yeah, jump in with my 2 bits. I think the same thing that Shruti was saying, right? You can change the nature of the discussion or relationship. This doesn't have to become a mine is bigger than yours discussion. And I actually think it really helps in negotiation skills, right? I remember taking these classes in negotiation and game theory in in college, but on the ground, play to your strengths, right? You don't have to become the man in the room. You don't have to become the hardball. You can kind of keep your, patience and your equanimity in this whole thing. So I think the bigger message is really play to your strengths. And, there's no gender stereotyping in, you might be a hardball negotiator. So go for it, knock it out of the ballpark. But play to your individual strengths, but also some of the more intrinsic female strengths, even at the negotiation table. I think, I've done, M&A of a couple of billion, and it's been harder to do the, negotiation while buying something across the street stall, right? So oftentimes the corporate world gives you the ability of at least a veneer of, courtesy, which is use it to your advantage.
Yeah, well said. I'll move on to the next question because we're getting a few more. So Preeta says, I want to know how we can overcome the discrimination we face and yet become a successful entrepreneur.
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Please go on. No.
Please.
I think for me personally, I think it's it's your product and it's data. Like data can often help undo a lot of biases that are there. So you really need to really understand what you're building. People, like product market fit is not just important for the business, but since we are talking about women, or in that sense, like anybody who's from any sort of marginalized identity, if you're in the room pitching, the more strongly, what you're building, the product, the data in and out, is really going to, maybe the few first minutes people will have their biases, but after a while they will have to, they'll have no other choice but to look at what you've built, because there'll be things that will back it, whether it's a customer or your projections or your real numbers. So yeah, just, don't think too much about it, I would say, because that also sort of gets you in that internalized sense that, oh, I'm entering a room where I'm an inferior. So don't let that also get too much in your head, and just go in with your, your understanding, your right data and knowledge.
Pankri, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I also feel that whether you are a male founder or a female founder, the founder in the room is supposed to be the expert on what you are building and the domain in which you are building. So I think that with all the research, the homework, the studies, I keep using the word studies because that's how I've got everything, that the more you can study, the more you can communicate and establish yourself as an expert in what you're building. And that is what everyone else also expects, you to know everything. So no, despite of your gender, if you are that person who's confident, well-read, well-researched, then you wouldn't really focus so much on discrimination.
Yeah, true. Ankita, do you want to jump in?
No, I think I'm going to echo the same words, that it's very important to kind of know what you're building and why you're building it, and really bring that out and believe in it really strongly, right? You're going to meet a bunch of people who are not going to believe in you and will have, so many no's and this and that. But I think what's really important is that, so yeah, you might be discriminated, but don't believe in that. Believe in yourself and your idea. And, as you build it out, you will get people to believe in you, right? And back you. And I think you should always play on your strengths and, really try to get some amazing people from the industry or senior people as mentors or as advisors who can be your sounding board and kind of take you forward. I think that's very important to always believe in yourself, because it's a long and hard journey and not everyone will say yes, right? But you keep building and keep moving forward.
Nice. This third question is from Monica, and she said, and this is for Pankuri. She says, how can we start an online platform such as Ask Pankuri without making a big investment?
So that's the beauty of internet, right? That today you don't need a lot of investment. You don't need to set up a shop to start a business. You can actually start a business from WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, whatever works for you, whatever sort of business that you are planning to build. I think the most important thing is to get some feedback from your users, some traction, deep understanding of what are you trying to build, and a good way to communicate it, because you might be doing something new. So if you have to explain it to different kinds of people and many people, then you should you should have first-hand experience in building it. So actually, you don't need people and you don't need money. You can start whatever business you want right away. And if you're building the right business, you'll find people, and customers are your god, right? So I keep telling people, go and read our Google reviews and you'll come to know that what people feel about the product. So if you can actually make the people who are using your product talk about you, then all of these things will come in place. How will you get money for that? How will you get more employees? That's a journey.
Nice. Yes, I think that's very true. I think in the age of the internet, anything is possible with as minimum setup costs as possible. Okay, I think we're in the last 5 minutes of the show. So let me just end with my standard question that gets asked at most of these panels.
We've got Tarun who wants to ask a question. Nirupa, I'm just going to enable his video and maybe.
Oh, okay. Please leave some time for my last question too.
Of course.
Yes, Tarun, go ahead.
I have to unmute it. Just give me a second here.
Tarun is also a founder at one of our founders at Brigade REAP, and he's kind of disrupting the whole retail space. Maybe take 20 seconds to explain what you do, Tarun.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So I'm the founder of a company called Lightstore. I don't want to use this time to pitch my company, but what we do is we offer premium retail spaces on a fully flexible basis so that digital brands can go offline without all the hassles. But that being said, my question very quickly, as the founder of a very small and very early stage startup, but also as someone who's come from a law school with very liberal values and had a good diet of all these things for 5 years, it's important to my co-founders and I to build an inclusive sort of startup. But at the stage that we're at, is there a playbook? Is there a benchmark? Is there anything that you followed in the early days of your companies where I don't have that many resources at my disposal to set the foundation for an inclusive startup? Is it just about culture and approach, or is there someone to learn from, something to look at? That's my question. Thank you so much.
That's a great question. Who wants to take a stab at it? Ankita?
Yeah, sure. I was thinking one of the entrepreneurs will. But yeah, no, you actually very rightly said that, I get this question so many times, and that we actually want to be inclusive from day one. But where do we start from, right? And I think it just at your level, when you're a small startup, it starts with the founder's values. I think it starts with your kind of leadership team, right? And I always tell these to startups. I'm not saying it's always going to happen or it's very thing, but if you can find someone senior from the industry, like for example, now you're part of this program and you have access to Nirupa and her network, right? You can get leaders in place who can be on your advisory board, on your kind of mentorship network, who can lead you in that direction, right? I think that's very important. I think when you're hiring as well, it's very important to kind of create values within your company and culture which attracts women talent, right? It be work from home, flexible working hours. Now, of course, because of COVID, this is all acceptable. But before, it was a very, big thing to even get access to work from home, right? But if you can create cultures like that, right? I think that's very important. And as I said, as you grow your company, again, it's not easy for every
17 hours.
Sorry.
But basically, if you can create opportunities for women or for people in your organization to upskill themselves, right? And a lot of kind of your policies in place in your startups are women friendly. I think there's a bunch of things that you can do. And of course, as you grow, and you become bigger and bigger, I think what you kind of lay as the foundation and you follow that as you grow, it creates your company as an inclusively built from leadership and for the culture and the kind of company itself. That's what I would kind of give my views at. But I'd love to hear from Pankuri and Shruti as well, because they're running companies and they've seen that journey. Maybe share their kind of 2 bits about that as well.
I think that, for every founder, we're in the middle of a tornado always. So we need to be thinking of what is the priority at every stage. So I think at this early stage, it is important to get your foundation right and get people who truly believe in what you are building and you as a founder. And despite of the gender, despite of their experience, people who can really become your inner circle in this whole journey. And you will find, the good thing is that there are a lot of smart women out there. Maybe the percentage might not be that high as of now, but the absolute numbers are actually quite high for all of us to have really smart women working in the companies. So when you reach that stage, when you have to bring in more people and get more creativity, then maybe you start thinking of these things. But at early stage, just focus on building.
Hi, Tarun. So I think for us, it was not, when for me, the first time I faced the issue of inclusivity was not around gender so much, but it was more around religion in my space, because, we work with a lot of blue collar workers, even few in our company on payroll, and then a lot of them on part-time basis because we get execution for material done. And that is when very initially I saw that there was like a lot of disconnect with people from different religion who didn't want to work with each other, sit with each other, eat together. And that is where I first had to make it very clear. And I almost went to a level of being assertive that I actually fired one person, just because I wanted to make it clear in the company that, we cannot discriminate on this, there's just no place for this to happen, and just set the tone right. This was very early when I hardly had 6 people on the team. So, even letting one person go is a big deal when you're that early and you're so young as a company, but you just have to sort of sometimes do that, because I knew that if we, especially as a building material company, if we don't treat the blue collar workers equally, you are not setting the right foundation. And and that then adds a lot of things, to then, like, now I have 15 people full time in the company. This question, it's I still don't have any other woman in my team besides me, so we're not very diverse when it comes to gender, unfortunately. But this time when we were rolling out JDs for hiring, we were hiring people for BD, we were hiring people for site supervision, and we wanted to put in things in the JD so that more women could apply for the site supervision jobs. And I knew, and that was where your personal experience plays in, where I know that as a person who's supervising the site myself, I need to care about my safety. I have a regular cab app and I have a ping cab app, because when I go home from 2 a.m. from a late site, I make a choice. I'm going to take that cab home because I need to feel safe, or I need another male colleague in my own company to actually just drop me home. So you have to then build certain of those things, as Ankita was saying, in your policy, in your culture, in your system, to make women feel that they don't have to worry about these things and they can freely work and grow and thrive. Especially sometimes in our case, where you're also from real estate, where things are sort of more where most times in construction sites it's mostly men you're working with. So if you're the female site supervisor and it's all men, you need to feel safe, and the company needs to make sure that happens.
Great. I hope that answers your question, Tarun. Okay, I guess so. Let's end with my question, my cliched question of what advice would you give to all women entrepreneurs? Stuti?
I think we've, messages from today are, let your knowledge, let your product, let your expertise speak for you. Really don't play the woman card almost, right? Play the card of expertise. But definitely be around for things like work-life balance, for parenting, not just for the woman. The more that fathers start looking after children is when the pressure is going to go off mothers, right? So really try, when you're thinking about inclusion, when you're thinking about, how can you just create better work-life balance, more kind organizations, even in the midst of the fire and chaos that's a startup. I think that would be my 2 bits.
Great. I agree. Ankita?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Stuti said. I think it's very important as an entrepreneur, whether you're a man or a woman, to really just believe in your idea, have confidence in what you're building, and make people believe in you, right? I think that's really important. And specifically, I think today, I think there's amazing communities out there and networks available to connect with. I know I have, because of COVID, been able to connect with so many people online. I think it's a great way of connecting. And I would really urge women to be part of, communities, whether it be to do with your expertise or your sector, or, if you're a mother or someone who's wanting to return back to work, there's some amazing platforms out there. So I would urge women to really kind of reach out through that. And really and try to also find someone as a mentor or someone as an advisor who can really guide you in your journey of entrepreneurship.
Pankri?
My advice is always, and it's for all founders, not just specifically women founders, is to find your inner circle. I think that it's such a hard and long and lonely journey, and it's just like we don't even know what kind of challenges we'll face because we're out there trying to do something very different. So find your inner circle, the circle of trust, in your inside your office, in your work domain, but also outside of your work, in your personal life. It'll be great if there is some sort of mix and match, that you have people from your personal life also sort of being your inner circle in your professional life, because that just gives you the confidence to take all the challenges head on.
Great, thank you. Shruti, do you want to end?
Yeah, sure. I think this is, as early as you can start, it's better, as an entrepreneur, and especially when you're starting early, as Pankri said, you'll probably have less experience. I only had a year-long experience before I started my company. So couldn't agree more. You find more people, whom you can learn from, who have already done the thing, to speed up the process. So mentors, I've always had mentors from day one guiding me, incubators, accelerators, a community, as Ankita said. I'm part of 2 really strong, communities, Aspen, another one as well, where, there are just a lot of strong women, role models, founders, people in high VP position that, I can learn a lot often. I've talked to them about things that I can't talk to someone else about, my term sheet or something. So just, have that really strong, safe, space that you can go to, because you have to just learn a lot sooner, while you're at it as an entrepreneur, because there's so much you need to figure out, and still you have to be the expert. So yeah, you just learn from a lot of experts and have a lot of them, with you as a support system.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that brings us to the end of this Trench Talk. Thank you so much, panelists, for taking time. I know everybody has a very busy schedule, and Ankita flying between places, and I appreciate everybody's time, and thank you so much again for all the the genuine insights that you all shared with us. I think everybody spoke so freely and honestly about so many different topics. And with that, I'll bring this to a close. Thank you all, and look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.